In this video, I'm going to go through all of the chart tools in PowerPoint. So I'm going to start off by adding a title to this slide. And then to add a chart, we go to Insert, Chart. And as you can see, there are several types of chart here. They all pretty much work in the same way once you've got them onto PowerPoint. But the sort of chart I want is this column chart. So I'm going to insert it, and it comes on to our slide. So the first thing we've got to do is add in the data. And I want to add into category 1 3 years. I want to add in 2021, 2022 and 2023, and I'm going to delete this fourth category, so we've only got 3 sets of bars. And in the series, I'm going to add in the product types. And then I'm going to type in all of the data for those product types for those years. And then we can just close down this data window. And so the chart comes in its default style. Now you may have styles set up within your template for fonts and color palettes and so on, which will obviously affect the way that the chart looks when it comes onto the slide. The first thing I'm going to do is to delete the chart title because it is already here at the top. I've typed it in using the slide template. So I can select the chart title by clicking on it and hitting delete. Alternatively, I can go across to this plus button here and just turn off the chart title here. And then I'm going to drag the chart down into a sensible position. What I'm also going to do is to select the whole chart by clicking on the chart area, and I'm going to change the font. So I'm going to change the font to Fira Sans, which is the same as the title font, and I'm going to increase the font size across the chart. You can change the font styles on just one element. So if I click on the left-hand axis here, I could, for example, change the font color there if I really wanted to, and it won't affect the other elements on the slide. So if we click on here, you see you've got 3 icons on the right-hand side. The plus icon I'll come to last. The next icon down is the chart styles, and in there you can change the style and the color. You can also do that from up here on the menu bar. But you can select different styles, and you can see the styles being previewed as I roll my mouse over them. And if I go to the color palette, you can select different color palettes. As you can see the colors of the charts changing as I roll my mouse over these colors. I'm going to stick to the default colors and in fact the default style for the time being. Under the filter icon, you can see that you can turn off the series and the categories. So for example, if I didn't want to show the cameras, I can click on that to untick it, click apply, and you can now see it just shows the lenses and the accessories. Likewise, I can turn off the years. If I wanted to turn off 2022, apply that, we can now see that it's showing all 3 of the product lines, but only for 2 of the years. Let's reset that. So the main control of all of the elements in the chart come under this plus button here. And you can see that some of the boxes are ticked and some aren't. So the axis box is ticked, for example. If I turn that off, you can see that the axis disappear, just leaving you with a chart which doesn't really tell you much, obviously. You can add axis titles. So I can click to turn that on, and you can see you've got axis titles. So I could add the word year in here, and I could add pounds, thousands in here. But it doesn't really make much sense because it's pretty obvious that these are years, and the pounds, thousands is already in the title at the top here. So that just adds clutter to your chart. So I would tend to turn those off unless they're meaningful. As we've already seen, we can turn the chart title on and off. We can also add data labels. So I'm clicking here on data labels, and you can see by default they appear above the bar. Now this could be quite a useful thing to do. You can also change it so that the data labels are inside the chart, inside at the base, outside at the end, or even with a data call out. If you put them inside at the end, for example, they're not very readable, but if you click on the data labels, you can change the color, of course. So we could change those to white, and likewise we will change those to white and maybe leave the ones over the grey or the light grey in black. You can add a data table to your chart if this is something that is useful and helps you to get the message across. Otherwise, again, just be careful because it adds to the clutter on the slide if it isn't really very necessary. You can add error bars to your chart. Also got control over the grid lines. Now you can see very, very faintly in the background that the grid lines are on this chart. But if I click on the right arrow here, you've got more options. And if I click on more options, you can see that you've got control over all of the elements of the grid line. So I'm going to change that grid line to a kind of dark brown color. And of course, you've got control over the transparency of the lines. If I want to make it slightly more transparent, I can do that. I can change the width and so on and so forth. You'll notice on a lot of these, by the way, that there are arrows to the right. So for example, on the axis option, you can turn off the horizontal and vertical axis independently of one another. And each of these has also got more options. You can turn off the legend. In this case, if we turn off the legend, it loses the cameras, accessories and lenses, and it doesn't make much sense. So we'll put the legend back on again. And again, you can see on the right hand side here that you've got options as to where the legend appears: on the right, at the top, on the left, or at the bottom. And finally, you can add a trend line. So you can add a trend line, for example, for cameras. Click on that. So if the trend line is useful for you in getting your message across, that is the way to do it. You'll notice that the grid line at the bottom there has stayed in that very light color. That's because it's part of the horizontal axis. So if I click on the horizontal axis, you'll see that on our context sensitive panel on the right hand side, you can change the line color of that as well. So I'm going to go into that and change it to the same color. You can also add a line color if you wish to the vertical axis. So let's do that. Let's make that also the same color. When you click on the chart, you'll see that under chart design, you've also got some quick layout options here. If you want to use the quick layout options, it's best to do that before you make any other changes. But if you roll your mouse over those, you can see that it offers you various options with some of the elements turned on. In this case, you can see as I roll my mouse over, the chart title has reappeared on this slide. So you can set up your chart to look exactly how you want it to look, and then make changes to the various elements on the chart if you want to after that. One other thing you can do, although it's probably advisable to get this right in the first instance, is to change the chart type. So we click on Change Chart Type and the list of charts appears. So let's make it into a line chart, and you get a preview of the line chart on the right hand side. Click OK, and up comes our line chart. And it obviously needs some work to make it look better, but you can do that. You can change the chart type if you think the chart that you have produced doesn't get the message across as well as a different chart might do. But there we have our finished chart in this brief overview of the chart options in PowerPoint. Do play around with them, investigate what other options there are, and as always, make sure you keep your charts uncluttered and make sure they work to get your message across to the audience.